First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Welcome, friends, to another episode of Creative Risk, where we talk about art, entrepreneurialism, and everything in between. With always, of course, a focus on artist sustainability. And today is a unique episode because we're having the wonderful Alan Bennett, who is currently wardrobe supervisor on the star-studded Othello that's on Broadway with Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel Washington. Alan and I worked together on Les Mis and Ain't Too Proud, but I wanted Alan on because Alan also came from a big performing career. As a performer, tours included the first national of the producers, a swing dance captain and understudy for Carmen Kia, Beauty and the Beast, and Cats. And in New York City, he performed at Radio City Christmas and the Spring Spectaculars for many seasons. A bunch of regional work, including Carnival at the Kennedy Center. Was that with Natasha, Alan? Hello, Dolly, with both Leslie Uggams and Michelle Lee Fun. Pittsburgh CLO, the Cape Playhouse. Tut's Arkansas Rep, Stages St. Louis, Sacramento Music Circus, and Walnut Street Theater, including and Starlight Express in Germany. Fun. As a wardrobe professional, Alan's Broadway credits include the wardrobe supervisor for Othello, Elf the Musical, The Wiz, The Piano Lesson, assistant wardrobe supervisor for Diana the Musical, dressed principal men on Les Miserables in the last revival, Getting the Band Back Together, and Camelot, and had dresser tracks on Ain't Too Proud, Bronx Tale, Dr. Zhivago, Paradise Square, and A Strange Loop. No stranger to this world, and I was really nerding out in this conversation. I loved talking about well, you're going to hear we get into all of it about what it means to sort of shift gears from performer to essentially another element of the industry, and I think a lot of important, unique considerations from the wardrobe side of things for specifically actors that I found super fascinating. So I hope you enjoy.
Is this your first podcast as a guest?
It is.
Do you listen to many podcasts or not really?
I don't.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah. I think I listened to all of Dolly Parton's America.
Okay, fair.
I listened to the first two installments on what was that true crime thing?
Yes,
that was
the
super
famous
popular.
One. Yes.
That's the one I listened to that. Maybe like every once in a while I'll listen to Dads and Daddies because gay. But I'm not really good about listening to podcasts. I don't listen to books on tape either. A lot of people are big on that. But for me, it just turns into sort of brown noise anyways. So,
are you a big reader?
I have been. I'm currently not a very big reader. I spend most of my time doing my Duolingo on the train. What
language?
Spanish.
Okay. All right. That's what I should have. That's what I should have studied. That.
Basic to get around the city and my neighborhood.
Around the world. Yes,
exactly.
Of course. No, I took French in school and I still regret it. I wish I had taken Spanish.
Yeah, I took French in school as well.
There you go. Exactly. Again, gay.
Gay.
So Alan, we've known each other, I guess, my gosh, probably for inadvertently, probably about 10 years, if you can believe that.
I sure can.
Back to the last revival of Les Mis, and so while we've certainly known each other professionally, in the capacity of you working in wardrobe and me as a performer, your whole career for a long time as a performer, and
that's correct.
So I want to start there, and I guess I want to begin by just talking a little bit about how you even got into the performing arts world. I always like asking people this question, sort of the first moment or so when they were like, "Wow, this is what I'm going to do with my life."
I was in like 7th or 8th grade. And I had done, I like sung with the chorus. I did all the choirs. I did all the like grammar school, whatever plays that people put together.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I always had a great time. And I was always the boy that had lines, like all that kind of stuff. And then, I went to a school that became 5 to 12. And the high school kids did a production of Hair. So we saw this production of Hair, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" and then I focused on that. I was lucky because people say all the time that they didn't know what they wanted to do when they were young. Like,
Yeah.
they got out of high school, they got out of college, and didn't know what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
I knew what I wanted to do, and it was right there. So,
And where did you grow up?
in Buffalo.
Oh, so you
Beautiful
weren't
Buffalo,
too far
New York.
away.
Oh no, it's very far away.
No, but I mean, but would you come into the city and
No.
Oh, you wouldn't at all.
Think of the shape of New York, right? It's
Uh-huh.
sort of like, this. So New York is like here, and then Buffalo's over here.
Okay,
It's
so a complete
a 6 to 8 hour drive. Like,
Okay,
Buffalo is basically in Canada.
Fair. So it wasn't very close. Okay, so then,
No.
besides your school exposure, what did you do? Because you danced as well. What was your training?
Right. So I started training in dance. I started training in ballet.
Okay.
There was a really, really great, at that time, community theater program. And they would put together, it was called the Committee for Youth in the Arts. And they would put together these very big productions. I played Art Park 3 times. I played Studio Arena Theater with these people. And they did 3 productions a year. And I started getting involved with them. So there were a lot of adults who had a lot of theatrical training, and lots of kids who were either wanting to do that or doing that because, whatever. And as a young boy, who could dance well, I was always cast.
Yeah.
So I was always working with these people who were of a professional level. And I did that all through high school. So I walked out of high school with 12 productions under my belt of shows that I had done already as I was going to go to college. So I had a lot of working knowledge. And I was really fortunate that I worked with some really great choreographers, and some really good directors. And I learned, anyone who wants to be in the arts, you just soak up everything. You're watching what everything does, everyone's business. And and then it just kept going, of course. I went to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. I am one of the first people to graduate their musical theater program. I'm the first 4-year graduate of that program. Brett Wagner, who took over that program, his first year was my last year, which was tragic for me. But what was good for me was that they were still forming the program. So when you went, this is back before you were born, when you went to that program, you were either a voice major or a voice principal or a dance principal. So I was focusing on dance. They didn't have a fleshed out dance portion of the musical theater program. So I took the modern dance because it was a modern dance school. So I was, got to take Graham, and I took Lamone, and I took, Horton. I took a lot of things that a lot of young people don't get exposed to, because musical theater dance is really ballet and jazz and tap. So I had this other thing happening in my mind, which was super exciting for me. And then when I got to the city, was great because I had a different vocabulary than the other dancers did. And I would approach things in a different way.
Oh, it was slightly unique.
Correct. And it wasn't, because some of that work is improvisational. I took choreography classes. I did a lot of that stuff. So in the room, I wasn't afraid. If someone says, "Oh, come up with the 8 counts here," great, I can do that. I need something that looks like this. Great, I can do that. It was just natural to me. But that was because I had been allowed to explore something else. Do you know what I memean? Also, I was able to take, I took all the acting classes there were to take. I maxed them out. It was just like
And
me.
you knew, I need to diversify. Like, you just had the
Oh yeah,
intuitive knowledge. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
How
And
did you know that?
also,
How did you have that innate sense? I'm just curious.
uh, so I'm not sure I'm going to say this very well.
Uh-huh.
There was in that time, if you were a dancer, you didn't speak.
Right. Different
Most people who
ensembles,
dance
right?
were afraid. Right, they were in the ensemble. They like, I don't want to have a word.
Yeah.
I don't want to have an open mic. I don't want to. And I was like, well, of course, I
Yep.
speak, I sing, I dance.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't anything for me to. I was always that chorus boy that had like this character over here, and you do that over there, and you'll be this person over there. You know, and also I paid attention. So I was also that actor in the room where if the director goes, I need this to happen, Alan, you'll
Yeah.
do that. It's
Yeah.
like it was always that. And I always wanted that. I never understand. Actors are like, okay, I'm getting in the room, but I'm going to hide because they don't want to do anything. Like, well, why are you doing this? That makes no sense to me.
100%.
I
hundred
don't get
percent.
that. Like, I get that maybe you want to have an easy show and you're looking at an 8-week, an 8-show week and whatever. But I'm like, I would always rather be busy throughout my show and not make it feel like I'm just waiting for something.
Of
Just
course.
keep me busy.
It's
You
so
know,
funny. You probably remember, or maybe you don't, but remember I sat down there for
forever.
54 minutes. It Ain't Too Proud.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
was, I didn't mind the pre-entrance. It was that I had to sit down there and sing the background. I would rather be up in my dressing room if I'm
Right.
doing something than
Of
sitting
course.
there for
Of course.
54 minutes, I
I did
totally
a
get that.
production. Right. I did a production of Cabaret where I was covering the MC, and it was a regional production. Um, so when they made my track, they made it so I would be not very used. So that if I was ever to go on for the MC, they weren't covering things in the ensemble. So that was the first time I'd had that experience. I was like, I don't know, what's the gay character's name? Bobby. I was Bobby. So in the first act,
In
I was in
Cabaret?
right. Uh, I'm sitting there with like my boyfriend at a table. I've got like 10 lines. I did like the two big dance numbers in the first act. And then in the second act, I did absolutely nothing. I literally entered 3 seconds before the end of the show as part of the final picture. And I was bored out of my
Of
skull.
course.
Like, I'm not, what? There's like, and all the other guys are like, I'm in this scene, I'm doing this in this scene, I'm doing blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I want to cut my head off. This is horrible. So,
Well, and so you worked a lot. I mean, you worked all over, kind of regional. You did a bunch of tours. You did Beauty and the Beast. You did the producers. So you were working. And I love that picture of you from
the cat,
Cats. I love that
yeah.
picture.
The makeup designer who's on the road with us had just done a whole series of those things. He's like, and we have been joking about what Vegas cats would look like. I'm like, it's just body paint and G-strings. He's, let's do it. So I painted my face, and he put the wig on, and then he body painted me. We were
I'm
bored. We were
actually
on the road.
I'm actually looking at it right now. You so that's great. He did the body paint and you did the
Yes,
face makeup.
the face.
So you were okay. So you were working on stuff. So then this is a big part of what I wanted to chat about was your transition then into wardrobe, stepping away from performing. How what talk to me about what that process was. What was the impetus for it, and then what made you stay essentially?
So I was a very fortunate actor. I supported myself performing for about 20 years. I,
Yeah.
and I was, I mean, lucky, but also talent, whatever. It's this business is all serendipity because we all know a billion people who are super talented who cannot get arrested. We know a billion people who don't audition well, so never get hired. We know people who audition really well and are horrible. also happens. But I was super lucky, and I had finished. I did all the producers tour. I came back to the city. I booked some great jobs, and then the market crashed in 2008, and people didn't want to hire equity actors for regional theater. They're like, "Is if the least amount we can pay, that's what we're going for." So I came back from a gig. I did an Evita at Arc Rep. I was like, part of the reason why I'm not performing on Broadway is because I'm never in the city. And because when you're a person who performs on the road all the time, I mean, I spent 2.5 years on Producers Tour. I spent a year and a half on the Beauty and the Beast tour. I was on the Cats tour combined for almost a year. I did a gazillion regional gigs, but I was never in the city. So things were auditioning and happening, and I'm on the road making money, which is great. Yeah. But it's not keeping you home. So I thought I would like to find the subsistence job, but I can't do anything. I have no computer skills. My interest in being a skilled barista is like this big. But I knew how to sew, and I am like watching people do the job of a dresser makes sense to me. So,
like you understood it just from being a performer. You're like, oh, I get what they're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, let's call a spade a spade. Especially when you tour, we've all had bad dressers.
Yes,
we absolutely know what not to do.
Right.
We absolutely know from being a performer. I know what's important to me to happen in a change. I know, like, sometimes I see a person set up a costume change, and I think, what are you doing? Like, this is not intuitive for the actor. It's got to be intuitive for the actor. So I had that information inside me, right? So when I came back to the city, the PSM on Mary Poppins was a person who was on the road with me on the producers. He was the first stage manager on the producers, and I was the dance captain on that gig. So we were very close. He had a great relationship with a woman named Helen Toth, who was the supervisor of Mary Poppins.
I know Helen.
Yeah. So my friend handed off my resume to Helen Toth and said, he's green as green can be, but you're going to love this guy. So I started working for Helen. Helen sets up a system. It's kind of like slave labor, right? She gives you tons of day work, and then she teaches you all the tracks, but then she knows where you are all the time. So the way that subbing works in the wardrobe union is you teach someone a track, and then you hope they're available when you need them, which is not ideal. It is very unlike being an actor swing. When you're in the building, you can pay attention to what's going on
around the show.
Good swing, right? You're aware of what's happening. You're aware of changes that happen in the show that don't necessarily filter through. You can't do any of those things as a wardrobe swing. You have to trust that your notes are correct. You have to trust that things that haven't changed. You have to trust that if you come back to a track that you haven't done it in a while, that the actors themselves haven't changed.
Or that the actors are aware, because some actors will be aware and be helpful and say, hey, da-da-da.
Correct.
And some actors will be in their own fucking world.
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you a gazillion stories of dressers who said, I was swinging the show, we put these clothes on. After the actor was dressed, he said, oh, this is the wrong thing.
Exactly.
What?
Exactly. You couldn't help me out?
You couldn't
help me out? Exactly.
When the pants came out? No, right. So from Helen, I literally worked 400 hours a week. I was always at Mary Poppins, pressing, steaming, whatever. And then I learned all the tracks on that show but one, which made me very, very valuable. After I was there for about a year and a half, I finally got moved into a dressing track. I ended up dressing the Mr. Banks. But I was also always available in the building. So if Helen had a cover for me, I could walk into the show and she would say to me, tonight you're dressing these ensemble men. Go. But great, because I've already done it. So it was super easy.
And valuable.
And very valuable. But also during this time, I developed a medical issue that required me to have insurance.
Mm.
And it's a medical issue that I have to have insurance for. And I was like, I can make my insurance as a wardrobe person at that time by working with something stupid. Like it was a threshold of money that you made that was very easy to attain if you were working consistently. I can get my insurance quickly and always have it, or I can go back to acting and not have that guarantee.
Yeah, good luck.
And, exactly. And also, when I started working in wardrobe, and I believe it's very much the same, supervisors don't trust you if you say, also, I'm an actor looking for work. Because then they don't know where you're going to be. And they don't know where what your focus is going to be. So we've all seen those swing dressers or young dressers who really want to be on the stage, and all they do is watch the stage. Like, your job is actually back here. Your job is to take care of these actors. Your job is not to dream of being that actor yourself.
Well,
right?
this was a question I had. This was a question, was if it was possible to maintain a double career. Have you seen that work or not really?
It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
It has worked for some people. It doesn't really work. Because, I mean, imagine what you have to do to book an acting gig.
Yeah.
Now if you're dressing a show, it's easily 40 hours at night. If you're getting home from your show, if it's a 8 o'clock curtain, your show comes down at 10:30, you're getting home at 11:30, 12 o'clock, depending on how the trains run. Do you want to do a 10 a.m. call? Do you want to get up early and make that, do the self-tape? It's a lot of work. And you also have to be present as an actor. Do you know what I mean? I've said this many times, and it's horrible, but I can walk into my job feeling like crap and having no energy. And I can get my job done. You can't necessarily do that as an actor. That was hard for me to do. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, of course.
You have to bring something. People are looking at you. And at this point, if you're on Broadway, people are spending hundreds of dollars to watch you on stage. The stakes are very high.
So at some point, was it around the medical issue that you were like, oh, this is what I'm going to do? And if so, was that a hard decision? And if you don't mind my asking, do you miss that freelance performance world at all?
So there was never a decision. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I was suddenly doing this, and I was suddenly making money consistently and staying at home. And when I started, I mean, this is going to sound very self-serving, but it's actually the truth. Before I started working at Mary Poppins as a wardrobe person, I was at least 3 times one of 4 boys left in a room to be in that show. So it was really awkward for me sometimes when the resident director would walk in backstage and like, "Hey, Alan, what's happening?" You're like, "Here I am. I'm dressing the show now." And most of the actors in that show were contemporaries of mine. Like, that whole dance ensemble, I knew half of them. So
and that was hard.
There were times there were times when it was really hard for me. But we had a show to do. And then I was still sort of dancing. But it wasn't I wasn't doing enough to pay bills. It was doing things that made me feel good. Right. And then at some point I was like, well, this is kind of what I'm doing. And I didn't make a plan to stop doing anything else. But this is what I'm doing. And that was what I was doing. And
you've been doing it for 20?
10 years, 15 years?
10 years.
Not even 15 years.
Okay.
So I want to say I started It's like 15 because I started dressing, I want to say in like 2010.
That makes sense. I want to clarify also, even if it's obvious, I want to clarify the roles in wardrobe on Broadway. I mean, anywhere, but just for people listening. So the difference between ensemble dressers versus principal dressers versus wardrobe supervisors, and only because I want to talk a little bit about the unique politics and bureaucracy of that world, as there are in any. So can you just briefly say what each of those roles are?
Absolutely. My job, my responsibility is to maintain the costume package as it is designed by the designer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people mistake my job to be the designer, but that's not my job. In the pre-production phase, I'm also, if the designer is a good designer, I'm also part of deciding how clothes will get quick rigged, how we take care of things to make them functional for the show, right? Do we have to cover this rhinestone brooch in mesh? Do we have to cover these buttons? Do we do a snap rig or a Velcro rig for the shirt to come off quickly? How do we, like, blah, blah, blah? Like, those things are all part of what I do, right?
As supervisor.
As a supervisor, it is also to make sure that the understudy packages are all complete, that they're all ready to go as soon as possible, and that we maintain them to be ready to go, and they're accessible quickly, right?
Like in Les Mis,
also,
I remember with all those boxes above the men's ensemble room. Remember all those boxes of costumes?
I sure do.
Yeah.
Those tracks were really hard to switch out because they're so complicated. And Steve was the person that was it was his job to switch out those tracks for the men's ensemble. And I have to tell you, because I covered for him before I started dressing principal men there, covering for him was a nightmare, especially on a 2-show day, because that stage management team was not real good about being smart. And they would put a swing on in one track in the matinee, and then for no good reason, put that swing on for a different track in the evening. So you're switching clothes like crazy. And it's a big show. There are lots of rags. And there you are trying to get all the rags in the right place. It was horrible. So also,
no comment on some of that.
Exactly. Also, I do payroll for my department. I hire for my department. I find and hire swings for my department. If I need subs, I find them. Like, I do all of this work. Interestingly, that's not the work of every department head on Broadway backstage. They're not responsible for their payroll. They find their swings in a different way. So it's a very, for wardrobe, it's a very big job. You do a lot of work. So then I have an assistant on this show, and that's very helpful to me, especially in the beginning stages. Othello is not a big play. Like, there's 20 some odd people on stage every night. There's a lot of camo because this production is set in the near future. And it's a military-based show. So there's a lot of camo. So a lot of, especially the male presenting players in our piece, are wearing a lot of fatigues, right? Sure. Desdemona is the only person with a great costume package. And then, so it's, in that regard, it's an easier show. But setting it up was a thing, because things started late and blah, blah, blah. And it was really, really helpful to have an assistant. And then she will be very helpful to me as I move forward, with switch outs and things like that, because the Barrymore is a tower theater. So everyone's top of show look starts in the tower. So it's bringing those things back and forth, right? To get them up where they have to go, make sure you've got them in the right place, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We've got 2 star dressers, which are very specific. They were hired by the teams for Jake and Denzel. They're part of my crew, and they answer to me, but they don't really answer to me, right? Because they're hired independently.
And hired via likely Denzel and Jake, correct?
Yes, in conjunction with right. Denzel's dresser is someone that worked with him on his last Broadway show. Jake's dresser was the wardrobe supervisor when he did Sunday in the Park.
And what is that like for you to have like essentially two people that are under you, but also sort of come with the stars?
Right. Both of these dressers are great.
Yeah.
Especially Jake's dresser, Christina Cucchiera. She has supervised, she has dressed, she has, like, you name it, she's done it in the wardrobe profession. So she is super helpful and lovely to have as part of my team. So we work fairly well together. And then there are other principals, and I hired those dressers. Kylene, obviously, who you know. And then we have two dressers who are dedicated to what we refer to as the ensemble, right? And they both, my female presenting ensemble dresser also dresses Bianca, who is a very small principal role. So it's a lot of puzzle piecing to figure out who's going to dress what, where they are in the building, blah, blah, blah. But that's how this show is set up. Principal dressing is, depending on how the show is set up, usually requires more attention to your actors, right? When I was dressing Javert and Valjean in Les Mis, I mean, originally when those tracks were set up, it was 1-on-1. Those men each had a dedicated dresser so that they could really take care of them.
Yeah.
There were many times where I was like, I would love to be here to do this and this for you, but I'm actually going to go do that in the other room. But there's a different expectation of how you're going to get things done, right? And that also goes into like making sure the room is set up right, making sure this happens for them. And then as you get into the star dresser category, you're really doing a lot of things that kind of are not in the purview of what a dresser does, but are part of helping maintain the actor's backstage life, right?
There's water bottles, towels, whatever.
Towels, yes. Pastilles, a tea at this bar, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the first time I came in contact with that was when I trained on the Mary Poppins track at Poppins, and that dresser had the whole thing set up. She made sure there were snacks in the room during intermission so that the woman playing Mary Poppins would eat something. There were like 7 different kinds of teas. There was throat coat. There was blah, blah, blah. There was this. Like, she had anticipated almost anything that the actress might need in those very brief moments where she has downtime in the show. It was really amazing.
Well, this is okay. So this will take me to another question, but just to say, I'm sure it either could be a good job if you have a person, a principal or a star who's again mindful, thoughtful, and also, just to be explicit, tips well, and I imagine it also could be quite the opposite if you have someone who almost, because the word we're not using, and I'm just saying this, is just because you're a star dresser doesn't mean you're a personal assistant.
Correct.
And I imagine that there are some stars who don't understand that line and might not necessarily, let's be explicit, compensate as well as they probably should for the amount of work. So if you have any thoughts about just that, but then specifically what the question wants to take me to is about the politics and nuances of a wardrobe hierarchy and what that world is like, that because so many of us, or so many, just don't have a purview into what that world is.
Right. So I have been on the receiving end of a principal actor that is not a tipper.
At all?
Pretty much at all.
Wow.
And I was like,
on Broadway, Alan.
On Broadway. I was
Wow.
shocked. I was shocked. Like, I worked with this actor for several months. I didn't get a tip until Christmas. And they're like, here's this. I'm like, okay. And then a couple months later, they left the show. They hadn't tipped me since Christmas. And they looked at me in the eye and said, it was like $50. Here's $50. It's all I can afford. All this actor talked to me about was buying cars, buying blah, blah, blah. Like all these things that he was going to do with his pay. And I'm like, great. And also, I get compensated. I get paid. I'm not living on your tips. Fine. But that actor did not clean out his dressing room when he left the show. And the next actor, this was Sunday, didn't take a thing. On Tuesday, the new principal actor was coming in to do the show. So that actor who didn't tip me left me with his dressing room to clean out. And I came in on the day off because also, like, I have a new actor. He shouldn't walk into this. And there's no way and
it's your responsibility?
It's actually not my responsibility. See, here's where
stage management.
This is a very weird thing, right? Technically, the dressing room is not my responsibility. I set up the dressing room and I maintain the clothes in the dressing room.
Yes.
What's in the dressing room? Not my responsibility. On The Wiz, we had this a lot where the stage manager would say, "This person's gone." Like, great. Clear out their stuff. I'll take care of their clothes. That's my job. But any crap that they've left, that's not my job. That's not wardrobe's job. But in this situation where you're talking about a principal actor in a Broadway show, you can't assume that someone else is going to do it. And if it's Sunday night and nothing is taken, and Tuesday afternoon, that new actor is in the building, and everyone's gone, it's not like you can call anybody. Stage manager was gone, company manager was gone, because it's your day off. I just took it upon myself. And I also...
because it's going to reflect on you.
Right. But I also want that transition to be smooth. And that's part of what dressing at that level is about. Like you want things to be smooth. You don't want your actor to walk in on day one of taking over a role that they're well known at doing on Broadway and go, why is all this crap here? Why is there no space for my life?
Of course.
It's ridiculous.
So then with that risk, and I'm so sorry that happened. I mean, again, you probably were thrilled when he was heading out the door. Because again, it's the lack of awareness, you know what I mean, and a complete lack of acknowledgement. Because as we're saying, especially in that role, it's a real personal touch to making sure that these actors can do their show. Actually, specifically at Les Mis, whenever I'd go on for Thenardier or anything, which wasn't a big difference. I was it just you weren't used to as much consideration. Not that it wasn't consideration, but you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly.
So then to talk about the politics of it, when you, for example, are seeking out your team, separate from a bit Jake and Denzel, which again, it's not uncommon at all for stars to say, if so-and-so's available, I'd like them. But how do people vie for roles? How does all of that come together?
So as a supervisor, there are people... Let me go back. So just as in the acting world, people who dress sometimes want to call out a career. Do you know what I mean? So there are lots of dressers who would prefer to only dress principal actors.
Because that means what to them?
I feel as though there's a little bit of cachet about that. And that's true for some people, but not all. People are more comfortable dealing with one person being able to give the extra amount of energy. And some people would prefer, like, if you came to me and said, you're going to dress something in a show, what do you want to dress? If it were a musical, 9 times out of 10, please put me in the men's ensemble. Please put me where I can have fun. I can do a job. I can check out during the end of the night. I can worry about these 5 personalities, and like whatever happens, that's what happens. I can get to know people. It's very social. Like, that for me is better. It's not as lucrative, right? Because you're the way
I'm being gauche, but is the base pay wildly different? I'm being tacky, but asking. But
no,
like,
it's all the same.
Okay,
it's really
but
hard as a dresser to. It's not about tips. It's like, for example, in our show, we have a 2-hour continuity call, right? So instead of just getting paid for the hour before, everyone's getting paid for 2 hours before.
Got it.
Right. So that's if I'm star dressing on a musical, and there is an actual star, I can negotiate to have extra time to do this work. And I can negotiate to have the hour after the show, which gets paid out at time and a half, regardless of what they need. So on some nights, if your show comes down at 11 and your star is like, I'm going, peace out, I've just made time and a half for nothing. Flip side is you could be there till 1 a.m.
because they have
taking care of guests.
Right. Exactly.
So for me, I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. I want to go at the end of my show. I want to go home.
Yes.
I don't want to do any of the other stuff. And that's just me. I have done it and I can do it, but if I'm going to choose at the end of the night, I want to go home.
Well, and to your point, it's so funny. I don't know if this is. Well, I'm sure you've had many, many, many jobs like this, both as performer and in wardrobe, where, for me, Ain't Too Proud, for example, same building as Les Mis, Ain't Too Proud was like coming to work to laugh with my friends for 2.5 hours. And that male ensemble dress, there was nothing more fun than that, Village.
Yeah, they were great guys.
I'm very vocal about, and I don't think it has to do with people's necessarily in the building, but Les Mis was a totally different experience. Where
it was a very different,
where I would also argue it didn't matter where you were in the building. Whatever.
It was. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting and very true that shows end up somehow creating their own energies. And there are some shows that are like, you just walk in and it's joy every night. Right?
Exactly.
And we all have life. So there's always going to be that comes into the building. But some groups of people deal with it better than others.
Yes.
And then sometimes you're in a cast where there's so much energy in so many directions and you just want to get through it. Exactly. People are insufferable. Exactly. What's happening? We're supposed to love this.
Don't even get me started. Actually, who I just saw old friends 2 nights ago, and I saw the amazing Gavin, who you probably
I love him so much.
Then did you work with him on Mary Poppins too?
I covered his track, so I dressed him, so I knew him from Poppins, and then when he was first at Les Mis, I was still swinging, so I covered that track as well. I love Gavin.
What an amazing man!
Fantastic.
Oh my God,
he's so amazing, and like especially to watch him do Bert, and see how he uses his energy, like on stage, bam, off stage, I gotta be down, like it, and it's. I mean, I love him, but I've never seen anyone be so economic with their offstage time. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting.
So smart.
Yes.
So smart.
Yes. Well, I was also just talking about like what a giving person he is.
Absolutely.
Just for saying this, because I covered him, and sometimes that can be a horrible experience. And
absolutely.
And he was, he would come up to me, Alan, and he'd say, if and when you go on anytime soon, I'm finding a new laugh right here. Maybe you could try it. I mean, he would literally say something like that.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Gavin.
Exactly. Exactly.
There are people who do that.
Please.
No, and it's interesting because it's like that backstage as well. Like there are dressers who will give you notes that are like 2 paragraphs, and you're like, you dress a whole show. This is not what you do. They're
Right.
like they keep the secrets, especially sometimes principal
Exactly.
dressers will do this. They'll keep the secrets so that they're always the one that's wanted.
Exactly. That is so.
Right? And you're
See,
like,
that is ridiculous.
is it ridiculous? Like it's the same thing as an actor. I'm not telling you my secrets. It's
yes.
kind of
No,
the
no,
same
no.
thing.
Alan, when I say it's ridiculous, what I mean is it's not that it doesn't make sense, which is why even someone like Gavin is an outlier, because there's a real different sense of generosity or sensibility. And if I may,
Right.
I remember, I forget when it was or what it was, but I remember Gavin saying to me, I could have done Les Mis for years. And I was like, what? And I it's because he was able to stay above the fray of it all, of which, deep in the bowels of that wardrobe village, I was not always able to avoid the fray of it all. And I was always impressed though with that, his ability to be like, just do his show and to stay positive. And
absolutely.
it's a skill. Because by the way, I remember the dresser drama. You probably remember the dresser drama in that show.
I do.
We won't go there.
I was sometimes part of the dresser drama in that show. I was like, I consider myself to be like super like easygoing, blah blah. We all have moments, but like, it was the first time I had it out with a dresser ever, and I was like, "What is happening?" I'm just
Alan.
We're doing our jobs.
I cannot tell you actually what it means for me to hear you say that, and I'll tell you why. I think I told you this. I wrote Abby an email.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote several people emails after that experience because I was like, wait. What? Meaning, and apologized. Because I was like, I don't really know what just happened. All I know is like there were about 5 moments where I was like, Joshua, no, I'll never forget. Terrence Reddick was teasing me on something, and I'll never forget. Do you know what I'm going to talk about? He was in the hallway, and I came out, and his vest was on the floor, and I kicked it down the hallway. And I'm saying this because I'll never forget. Abby was standing right there, and she was like, Joshua, and I'll never forget it.
No,
because I don't know if to be honest with you, Alan, I don't know if in the moment I really took responsibility for it. All I know is later on, I think I probably at least apologized. I think I tried it because I had no leg to stand on. But that was an example where, like, later on, I was like, I am so sorry because, and so I guess to hear you even say, like, for all of us, there was like moments of like, what is going on, right?
Right. Yeah. And from my experience, it's either all or nothing.
Right.
It's either the whole building,
right,
or everyone's fine.
Right. Exactly.
And
exactly.
When I toured with producers, Leroy Reams was playing Roger Debris, and we had they had assembled a cast of adults. We were all seasoned people. There were no newbies. Like maybe 1 or 2 people had never really toured before. But it was like a first national tour, so it wasn't really touring. Like, we're going to go and sit down for a month in this fantastic city. We're going to sit down for 9 months in Los Angeles. We're going to be in San Francisco for 2 months. Like, that's not real touring. Right. But we were like, had this idyllic situation, and people would come in and do their job, and people would be happy about it. And Leroy Reams once said to me, there's always one in every show. And when you can't find the one, you've got to worry it's yourself. I'm like, you're right. But there really wasn't one. Like, we had one. But it was like that kind of thing. So like the people who moved with the tour were all great people. Everyone supported each other. It was great. And then you get onto a job where you're like, why is everyone crazy? Everyone's crazy. Like stupidity everywhere. You're like, what's happening? Who put these people together?
Exactly.
But I feel like it's like almost always all or nothing. It's either all lovely people or like a
No,
whole bunch
I
of crazy
think,
people.
well, we'll just literally take again those two with same building. And I used to talk with Richie, rest in peace. We used to talk about just how crazily divergent. Because again, even though I had all that time off, I literally felt like I was just hanging out with my friends, including, by the way, Rihanna Bennett. We had a great time. We
she's
had
fantastic.
We had a great time down there.
Yeah, I mean, it was so much fun down there, and part of it, to be fair, is I felt like there were like twice as many people in that wardrobe village in Les Mis, and
oh my
also
God, it was crazy.
so much more clothing. So it was everything was packed, everything was tight,
It's
everyone
so
was
true.
on
And
each other all
fast.
the time,
Exactly.
and fast, and they're like just. You're sitting next to a basket of rags, and some poor dresser's scrambling through that rags to find the rags you wore already, so you can wear the rags again. And you're like, Jesus Christ, how it's so crazy and frantic for everyone. And then Act 2, everyone's smoking, but it's crazy. And then Ain't Too Proud was a whole different energy,
Right?
Because we had like one person would have like maybe 10 looks, where in Les Mis they've got 15 to 20 looks, right? Our Ain't Too Proud is all like suits and shirts and simple things that hang. Les Mis, rags, waistcoats, vests, knickers, shoes. I mean, like all this stuff. Yes, like Jesus Christ, it was like an explosion. So for Ain't Too Proud, when we set up that room, which was a real pain in the derriere, because you remember there was like that weird like trio of chairs in the middle. Then you had a chair in the corner,
which was the same chair I had for Ain't Too Proud,
right? Pretty much. But like at Ain't Too Proud, we did a thing with that space which was not great, but it served that space really well. And in Les Mis, it was like a great big horseshoe of stupidity around the room, and it was just like there's no hiding from anyone. You were like always like staring into the abyss.
You were sort of saying so this, different. but what skills from your performance background have helped you in wardrobe?
I think the skill that helps me the best is being able to intuit what an actor is going to need in a moment, because I've been that actor.
Yes.
I know how costume change works from being an actor, and like if I'm doing a lot of shoe changes, and people will comment about this in my notes, I always say in the notes, actors right, actors left, always. So it's always the same. So there's never a question, right? Yes. So when my sub comes in, they know that that's how it's going to be. There's never a question when you get to that moment. There's never that 3 seconds of lost time where you're shuffling for which shoe is going to go on, right? It's the clarity and the consistency, because I know that muscle memory is your best friend if things are going wrong, right? We've all been in a show where you check out for a moment for whatever reason, and you find yourself on your right number somewhere else. Like, how did that happen? How did I walked off stage, and now I'm in the dressing room. It's what I do. I don't remember doing that. And it's because your body takes over, right? So that consistency, that choreography backstage is super important for when things go wrong. When you're having a day, when you're having an emotional problem, when a costume piece is not in the right place, or like something crazy happens, like when we were doing Elf, one of the little boys just started vomiting.
Just came up.
He was backstage. It was a mess. We were running all over the place, and we were still early in the show. But like in those moments, when everyone knows what they're doing and everything is rote, those things are easy to deal with. I mean, with a reason, right? Because everyone goes and does the thing that they always do. And I think that's really, really, really important. And I always, when I'm setting up a track, I always try and create that so that we all know. But also then the actor knows, like if I'm having a day and I haven't set something, and the actor knows Alan always does this like this, and I haven't done it, they'll say, hey, Alan, where's my blah, blah, blah? Like, fuck. Right here, you're blah, blah, blah. I'm back. Because we've always done it. There's no question.
Well, I also just want to say to that last point about, hey, Alan, where's my blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm actually, I'm kind of nerding out over this conversation. I really like this because I just don't think people fully, think about or think through this huge piece of the backstage puzzle. And I think, only being an actor, you being an actor, watching lots of actors, I am always stunned at sometimes the complete assumption that they play no role, to your point about, oh, I shouldn't be putting on this costume, or how can I help make, I won't say who it is, but there's one actor that I think about that no consideration for where or what their dresser's doing or what the other actors are doing, just barrels through and expects you to be where they need them to be. And that's crazy behavior, especially if you are in the ensemble. Meaning let's just be clear. If you're in the ensemble, you can't expect your dresser, for example, to treat you like they're your star dresser.
Correct. And also, if you're a principal and your dresser is dressing for other people because of the economy of Broadway currently, you can't expect that. And it's really hard to be clear about that, but you have to be clear about that.
Yes.
There's a person on Les Mis that was always dressing cats, herding cats. I don't know where you're going to be. And they were an ensemble cover for principal role that they went on for frequently. And you would literally have to say to them, right arm, left arm, now let's put on your pants, now let's put on your shoes, no, come back over here, we have to put this on. I mean, it was every single time.
Was this someone who went on to take over?
Maybe. And even then was still herding cats. But there's some people who are unfortunately who are not aware that they are part of a larger thing, and also I'm all for fun and games. But you have to do your job.
Exactly.
And you have to do your job in the way that the job works, right? Exactly. I was dressing a principal actor, and I was dressing multiple principals in this production, and there was a wig person that was always sort of on hand. And one day, my actor was getting super flirty with the wig person and not getting clothes on. I was like, how about we spend less time flirting and more time putting our clothes on? And my actor's like, oh, Alan's mad at me. I'm like, I got a job to do. It is not just about you. It's not just about you.
Well, and in those environments, it's tough, because they are so playful, and especially I think that is part of the value of what those worlds can be. But yes, there's like you're saying, there's shit to do. But it actually kind of, I would love to just walk us through what's a typical day look like for you during a Broadway run. Just take today, actually, which is maybe not typical because of what you're having to go do. But what does a typical day look like? Because I think again, most people go, oh, the clothes are there. You hang them back up at the end, and then you just put them on the,
Right. I'm going to talk to you about doing this, supervising a musical specifically.
Great.
It's very different, right?
Yes, of course.
When I supervised The Wiz, we were able to, because the way the show was set up, it was set up like Les Mis was, and Ain't Too Proud, sort of like a Gondola Village situation.
Yep.
So all the clothes are really easy. They're there to prep. So we would prep in the hour before. We'd have a stitcher available to take care of alterations or to do repairs as needed, right? When I did Elf, we couldn't do that because we were all over the building and the costume package was big, shockingly bigger than The Wiz. So we had day work every day. So in a show where there's day work every day, me or my assistant has to be there during the day to do that day work. So I am on Tuesday, you're there for 4 hours. you take a break, and then you come back to the hour before and you do the show.
And talk briefly about what day work is, just so that people fully fully understand what that is.
So what we do in day work is you're prepping the clothes, right? In Ain't Too Proud, that was a lot about pressing shirts, right? But you're also making sure the pants are laying right. You've got all those wrinkles out of the sleeves, out of the back of a jacket, out of the front of a pair of pants. You're checking for every seam, every button, every hook, every eye. Making sure the rubber is on the shoes. If the shoes have been rubbered, which is almost always across the board, shoes are rubbered. On a dance show, that is imperative to keep on top of.
Of course.
You're making sure like the hats are right and blah, blah, blah. Like the day work calls for Music Man were crazy because the pieces were so complicated that you had to like deep dive into things. For Elf, we had these in the opening. Everyone has these weird little elf costumes where they do this Lord Farquaad thing, like they do in Shrek, where the actor's on his knees and the little like have a little body in front of them. So we're like,
Lord Farquaad, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we had a whole, the ensemble each had one for the opening number of Elf. So we're like checking those, making sure the cape is right, making sure there's blah, blah, blah. Like you're checking for things that actors get on their clothes when they're eating things that they shouldn't be eating in costume, which is like, for me, it's having been an actor.
Is that a pet peeve?
Well, it's a pet peeve when they're unaware.
Exactly.
Like when you're unaware that you've had cake and you have frosting on your jacket. Why are you still wearing your suit jacket? You can take that jacket off. You have 15 more minutes before you can make an entrance again. Take the God blessed thing off. Like, come on.
Or just, what I used to do is just throw a towel on the front of myself if I'm
yes.
You know what I mean?
Something.
Yeah.
And, I've worn plenty of costumes that I've eaten in.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because the other thing that I always find amazing is actors are sometimes unaware that the actions that they take in their clothes affect their clothes.
You mean like doing like dropping like it's hot, or like doing a workout, or like exactly? Actually, Alan, just because you weren't there, it was Megan, but Megan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In Toronto, right before literally Act 2 was starting, and I was playing around with Nasia, and we were doing, and I dropped into a deep squat, and I had to make an entrance in about 90 seconds, and my pants split open. And they were following me up, trying to sew it together moments before I have to make an entrance.
Yes.
All because I stupidly thought, let me do a deep squat in this suit from 40 years ago.
Exactly. It used to make me crazy. I wasn't on the wardrobe crew, but when I did Producers on the Road, there were actors who would show up dressed and then start stretching. And I'm like, of course, it wasn't the women because they all starting gowns, but like the guys are in tuxedos and they're mostly underdressed with something else underneath. And this dude would come up and start stretching on the stage, and I'm like,
you just knew even then, and you weren't even you. Well, yeah, you just knew.
It's just logic, right? Your tuxedo was made for you to stand. That's a park and bark tuxedo.
Exactly.
There's nothing stretch about it. It was not designed for you to have full flexibility. And now you've jammed clothes underneath it. And now you're trying to stretch. And yes, he did rip those pants out. In the same way. And you're like, well, here we are. The curtain's coming up. All the dressers are behind that opening set piece to do all the quick changes that have to happen after you finish that opening number, because you can't get on stage once the show starts. No one's available to help you. Your big flapping butt with the pants you got underneath are now there for everybody to see.
Some of us would have appreciated it more than others. Okay, so you do the day work, you prep all the clothes.
Right. So then you're ready to come back and do your show. So at the hour before, that's about like getting information, who's in, who's out, making the switch outs, but then setting your show for what you've got to do. So some shows have a lot of quick change baskets that have to happen. When I did Dr. Zhivago, I preset 16 baskets of clothes at the top of the show. And that was for the first act.
And this is, by the way, how you get your exercise, right?
This is how you get your exercise.
Exactly.
Yes. Which is why I'm now fat, because all I do is sit, being a supervisor. So it's about getting all those things done and making sure that you're ready at half hour for your actors in case they need something. Like in case laundry has forgotten to put in your underwear or your socks. And it happens because, people are human. Things happen. Also, actors are really bad sometimes about putting their laundry back into a stupid ditty bag. So
they keep it out loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's
so
the
then
awareness
you don't have
thing.
it when you're doing laundry, and you're like, I don't know where this is. And then the actors say, oh, my socks are not in this bag. Let's check. Oh, look, here on your beauty station are 5 pairs of your socks. Maybe you could wear one of those. I'll take the rest of these with me.
So basically, I'll tell you the big thing that I'm actually taking away from this is that part of working in wardrobe is just kind of like being a parent for a bunch of adults.
Yes. Yes.
And kind of trying to get them to behave, put their dirty clothes back.
Right. I can't tell you how many times we have the conversation at the end of the show. And I have never, ever, ever been in a cast of people where this is not a conversation, right? Because as we start, once we start previews, right, wardrobe has a 15-minute window to hang all the clothes and get the laundry downstairs. After that time, we are paid for the hour after, which is at time and a half. And it's so hard sometimes to get the actors to understand that there's a time limit. I'm working under a time limit. The producers of the show want me out of here in 15 minutes. And for you to stand there in your underwear and your cell phone talking to your bestie and figuring out where you're going to meet after the show, they're like, my show is over. This should be my time. I'm like, your show is over. The other people who work in this building, their show is not over.
Exactly.
Get out of your drawers.
Exactly. And if you can, sorry, because I'm still on this too. If you can, take your mic off as you're coming off stage, hand it to the A2 before you even go into, like there's little things to your point.
Yeah. So on some shows, it becomes a problem. Yes. And it always is shocking to me when you have the conversation with an actor. And they're like, really? That happens? I'm like, really, girl?
You're like, you just did it 2 days ago. I've done it. We've all done it.
We've all done it.
100%.
Like for lack of a better word, the ignorance of my show is done. Even if it wasn't a financial situation, why would you hang up your dresser who has to be responsible for those clothes?
Exactly. Well, because again, you just said it. It's about earlier about I want to go home too. We all want to go home because just to be clear, the end of this is that the day ends because then laundry has to begin. Does laundry happen the next day or does it typically happen that
almost
night?
Always the next day?
Yeah, good.
Because also financially, if you start your laundry at 11 o'clock at night, there's no way it's going to be done in an hour. Like especially for 100%. A show with a lot of people. At midnight, regardless of what you're doing as a wardrobe professional, you get paid double time after midnight, between the hours of midnight and 8 a.m. Any hour that you spend working that, it's double time. So no one's paying for that.
Yeah, of course.
Except for like crazy times. Now, I've been in shows where, like on Strange Loop, there were 2 people who had ensemble tracks, and there was a pickup track, which was mine. The 2 people who had those ensemble tracks would get to the end of the show, and they were paid the hour after specifically to push the laundry and prep clothes for the next day. So when they came in for the hour before the next day, most things were done, and they were just setting the show and prepping the last things that had to get prepped. But that show only ran 110 minutes, right? So
it was all within the window.
Correct. When your show comes down, if your show starts at 8, and your show comes down before, like at 9:30 at the latest, you have an hour and a half to get things through the wash. Also, 7 people on stage. You're really only washing on a daily basis the underclothes, right?
Yeah.
And then
100%.
you would wash like this jumpsuit or this blah blah blah. Some of those things got washed daily. There's always 2 of them in that situation. If there are clothes that get washed daily or prepped daily, there's always at least 2, right? So that's easy to do that. And sometimes it's about getting the laundry in and then getting it through the dryer, and then the things that have to hang dry, they hang dry overnight. You come in the next day, they can get prepped.
What is one of the most stressful or high stakes, let's say specifically quick changes that you've ever built, seen, been part of?
I was swung on Aladdin. The magic that happens for the top of Act 2, Prince Ali, is not for the faint of heart, because you're responsible for 1 or 2 actors who are literally putting on clothes, walking onto the stage, crossing from upstage to downstage, coming off stage, coming back to you to get a new outfit. It happens 3, 4, or 5 times during the show, depending on who it is. Sometimes it's everything they're wearing. Sometimes it's just pieces. But there's a very specific way to set things up. You have to be ready. Things go wrong in costume changes.
Yes.
It's so crazy. It was so crazy and stressful. Once you get it, it's very exciting, right? So, like, if you're a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, like, you're getting ready for the thing, and if you have a great actor, like, you get it, and things move, and it's fantastic. But, like, looking at that, and there were dressers who would take pictures of everything, of their preset, because they're like, this basket has to go like this, and then this is across that basket because it's got this preset in it, and then this is going to be for this, and then this, blah, blah, blah. It was crazy. It was crazy.
I mean, that's exactly what I mean, is like, and you make it look like it's so simple. And I would,
Right.
and let me ask you this question. Do you need to build trust with performers? Meaning,
Yes.
like, and if so, how do you do that? Especially when you're dealing with people's personal space, but also in terms like those quick changes, how do you, you probably need, again, to be in a collaboration with someone. So we talk about
Right.
that.
It's just about professionalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a good sense of humor. I think for me, that's what works, right? Having been on both sides, like, I've been in situations where I relied on somebody for a quick change, and they were always great, and we set it up, and that's how it always went. It was fantastic, right? Also, when I did Producers on the Road, as a swing, you've got 2 things going on. You've got clothes that you don't wear all the time because you're not in a show on a daily basis, and you've got a new dresser in a different city. And it can be dicey. Like, I remember several times on Producers, I would go back to do my costume change, and they would have the wrong clothes. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing it in this, because that's all we got. But then you have to be easy about it, right? You can't berate the dresser. They don't know.
Of course.
Supervisor gave them these clothes. Well, I don't know what this is. I'm just putting clothes on you. It's all about that. You just create, and part of it is, for me, when you walk into these quick changes and you set it up in your head and you set it up logically for your actor. You tell your actor how it's going to go, and they go, oh, that makes sense. What if we do this? Great, we can do that. And then it keeps running. It gets better and better and better.
Exactly.
That's where you have to come from, right?
Right.
And that
like
goes back
any
to me saying earlier about choreography backstage. Like, if you set the choreography, it's always going to be the same. It's super easy to build trust.
Right.
It's always going to be the same.
Is there a particular collaboration, whether it was with an actor that you were working with, or someone backstage or the like, that as well, that has really meant a lot to you, someone that you really clicked with?
That's a hard question, because I click with a lot of people. I'm a fairly easygoing person. I mean, you know this about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty, like, I can be very no nonsense, but I can also be very fun.
Yeah.
I have been very fortunate over the course of a lot of time in the theater to have worked with a lot of wonderful people that, even on a daily basis, even small conversations just make everything great.
Yeah.
And I think understanding, because I got this really early, like community theater in Buffalo, New York, if you treat everyone well, you are treated well.
Yeah.
Right? When you walk into a process open for everybody, if you're open and willing to do work, everybody can do the work. And then it's easy. And that's what theater's supposed to be. We're supposed to be, we choose this because we love it.
Yeah.
We don't choose this because we're going to make $1 billion. Nobody's going to make that much money. Right? And the people who like grew up knowing they wanted to code or be a lawyer or be a doctor or like any of those things that are like, you're really focused on that thing. That's what's doing it for you. That's not what we did. We chose to be creative in some way, shape, or form, and to do that on a nightly basis, to create something that is magic to people who are watching it off stage.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it should not be anything but that?
Exactly.
If everyone just does their job and is open and is kind, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, I just want to talk about Othello very briefly because like we said, you're supervising Othello, which is do say hi to Neil and Will for me, but with Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel Washington. I guess my question is, besides them obviously coming with their own dressers, is the building of that show any different, or is the building structure any different when you're working with two major celebrities like that?
What happens in my experience, which is not everybody's experience, right? But when you've got people who are big players like that, that have their own entourage and they've chosen their own dresser, is that they become isolated with those people, right? And people know, like, everybody knows who I am. Denzel and I don't sit down and chat.
Right.
I mean, that's just not the nature of what this is about.
Yeah.
And he's also carrying this big thing on his back. Jake is too. I mean, they're both big. They're big, wordy Shakespeare parts.
Yes.
It's a lot. Focus is important. Absolutely. And now we're at that point where we've opened, we've done the work, and now people can start to relax in their offstage time. So there's this more little hi, how you doing? Have a good show. Raw, in the Barrymore, in the way the stage space is made, there's no onstage crossover. So if you're going to enter from stage right, you have to go through the basement. Wardrobe is at the bottom of the stairs. The first thing you hit, it's a great big sort of long hallway to nowhere. And I'm sitting at the end of that hallway to nowhere. And because of the way the floor is, I'm raised up 5 inches. Like, hey, just waving to people as they walk by. Hey, getting back on my computer. Hey, and wardrobe always has snacks. So at some point, everyone learns that wardrobe always has snacks,
exactly.
And the people are in wardrobe having snacks.
Yeah, I miss those peanut butter pretzels. Have you
Right?
seen? Have you? And if so, how have you seen backstage culture change over the years, if at all?
I will speak to specifically, and this is been a problem for me personally. I have a very dark sense of humor, as you know, and I am of the Noel Coward, Oscar Wilde double entendre school of theater, which does not play well currently in the world that we work in. Mm-hmm. So that has been, not just for me, for many people, who came to theater before the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
It's a very big change to the way you interact with people.
Yeah.
And like pros and cons, but like you have to be very specific about how you approach somebody in a fitting, how you take measurements, how you like do the act of dressing becomes guarded. And it's fine. It's fine. But it's also, for me, is always a thought process. Right. And I always have actors who will say, oh, you don't have to say that to me. And I have to say, I do have to say that to you because I have to practice. But also, like in the culture that we're working in, if I say something to you, Joshua, because we have a relationship and it might be a little flirty, Joshua, my actor, is fine. Joshua knows me. He's not threatened by me.
Yeah.
If someone overhears me be flirting with Joshua, they can have me written up because they're uncomfortable with the interaction that they've just heard. That's a thing. And there's value in it, but it also changes the way the people interact backstage. And
Of
that to me has
course.
been like the biggest thing for a lot of people of a certain age, because we're used to a certain kind of banter. We're used to, I mean, when I started dancing 3 billion years ago, when I was doing modern dance in New York City, I would walk into a rehearsal studio with men and women, gay and straight, 9, 10 people. We would literally disrobe. We would put on our dance wear. We would dance for 3 hours, rehearse for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever it was. We would take all of our clothes off. We'd put our street clothes back on, and we would leave the building. We didn't think anything about that. In that partnering work that we were doing, we did very intimate things. You touch people in very intimate places.
Yeah.
It just wasn't part of our culture.
Yes.
Right. And then I remember the first time I got on a cruise ship, my first professional actor job, when I was trying to get back into musical theater after being an artist that was starving for a long time. Like the first time I dropped trout in front of a guy who was in the cast, because I wasn't thinking that it was a thing, he literally turned his head. It's like, what? Okay. So then I relearned that part of it. And then I watched, as time progressed, people being a lot less casual about being comfortable in their skin and changing clothes around people. Now it's very common for people to remove themselves from an ensemble dressing room to change underwear, which is great. Like everyone has their own parameters, but things have changed a lot since I was in a studio with people in 1980, whatever it was, and we were all very comfortable. And that was not just in the dance world; it was kind of across the boards. Like I remember doing. I can't even tell you on a podcast because someone will get me fired. But like things that I did in a dressing room, things that my friends and I did in dressing rooms because it was funny and we were comfortable with each other. That world doesn't exist. And now with, and I will also say, were there people who were uncomfortable with the shenanigans that were happening? I don't know. And if there were people who were uncomfortable, I'm sorry about that. There's no malice involved, right? In terms of just being kind of naked all the time. We just were sort of naked all the time. So all of that is to say, like the way I dealt with people and talked to people and manipulated people's bodies, like even as a dance teacher now, a teacher of dance, in my day, it was nothing for someone to put their hands on my body, to make it go in the way they wanted it to go.
Of course.
Right?
Same. Yeah.
I know that you can't do that any longer.
Right.
Like I have a friend who's teaching at a community college on Long Island. She's had this job for 100 years. Like you can't touch people.
Yeah. Without their permission.
Without their permission.
Yeah.
But now there's a whole because you've done it your whole life, you have to think about it.
Exactly.
And it changes the way I approach things in a good way, but also it's reprogramming. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. Well, I think for all of us, which is partially why I'm curious about it. What advice would you give to a performer who might be considering other paths within the industry, including backstage roles?
You have to be sure that it's. I mean, and there's nowhere to be sure. Let's be clear. You've got to be sure that you're going to be ultimately comfortable working in that capacity, right? There's a bit of the wardrobe world that is sort of, how do I say this? You're sort of like I don't want to say a butler, but you're sort of like in that capacity, right? You are secondary to what's important about what has to happen on stage in a way, right? You have to be willing to be the helper. You have to be willing for that to be okay with you, right?
Sure,
you take a little bit of your ego as a performer out of this equation, and you've got to be ready to do that. And it's not easy, but it's a service sort of situation. Like I am helping you do this thing. You have to be ready to do that, and have to be ready to acknowledge that if you're stage managing, it's different from what you did as an actor, right?
100%.
You have a different
yes.
role.
My
role as a dresser is different than what I did as an actor. Is it as valuable? Yes. Does it sometimes feel subservient? Yes.
Sure.
But also it's work that has to be done to make the show work. Especially in those big musicals, like I just saw Smash, we saw Death Becomes Her. Those kids are changing clothes like crazy. That backstage, like MJ the musical, perfect example. I watched that show and thought that backstage is a disaster. Just because if you're watching the show with the eyes to see it, you're seeing how people are changing clothes over and over and over again. And we know what that means backstage. Like that shit, you took that shit off. It's in a basket somewhere. You got new clothes on. That stuff's got to get hung. Next thing has to get ready. Like it's crazy backstage. And you have to be able to feel great about that, the value of yourself in that situation.
Yes. And understand, as you're saying, how it's additive. Okay, last question then. Do you see yourself staying in wardrobe? I actually didn't know you were still teaching dance, but do you feel yourself exploring another chapter? What's next?
I haven't taught in a long time. So let's say that. I had a great experience a couple of years ago where there was a college that my husband was affiliated with.
You were choreographing.
Right? I was choreographing.
Violet?
I was choreographing and teaching. No. I did something. I did Millie. I did something else in there.
I remember this
work it's work that I love doing, but it's not facile with what I do now. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
If I'm dressing, and an opportunity like that comes up, I may have a supervisor that's willing to give me that much time off.
Yes.
But that changes from supervisor to supervisor. It changes from the time of year that we're in. For example, if you just set up Smash, you don't want to give your dressers any time off before Tony's, right? Because all up to the nominations, all through the Tony voting season, you want your show to be impeccable.
Yeah.
The best way for you to make sure your show is impeccable is to keep the same people backstage. Consistent. It's that consistency thing again, right?
Yeah.
I know people, supervisors who, even if the show opens in the fall, they don't want you to take time off.
Yeah.
Because they're eyes on the show all the time.
Yeah.
And so I understand how important that is. But the flip side is I understand how important time off is. Um, so and I had this problem as an actor as well. Like I didn't never want to take time off. I have to, in the old days, we were brought up to think if I'm not in the show every day, every show, I'm lazy. So we would work through things that we shouldn't work through. We would come to work sick when we shouldn't have come to work. It's very easy, as I said earlier, it's very easy for me to do that backstage because, especially if I'm not dressing with somebody, if I feel under the weather and I know I'm going to be in my corner in the back of a room,
You put a
I'm not
mask
going to really
on.
affect anybody. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You're done. But it's important for a life balance. I'm sorry, I just went in a whole other direction. For a life balance, it's important to take the time off to do things that you love, right? And so I think even if it's vacation, like take the time to go away and not be in the building and come back with your energy recharged, or if not recharged, the knowledge that you had an experience that is not 8 shows a week in the basement of a theater.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't see myself ever going back to performance to go back to directing or choreographing. If that opportunity fell in my lap, would I take it? 100%.
Sure.
100%. But also, like, I am at the end of my working time, in theory. So I have an eye out for what that's going to be for me. Because I switched trains in 764. It's takes you, I think it's 30 years to be fully vested in the union in terms of the pension, right? So my goal is to like work as many years as I possibly can to get that money.
Yes.
Get the money.
Of course.
Because like we all know right now, we don't know where that money is going to be in 10 years. Right. Yeah. So like my goal is to work 10 more years. Who can say that that's going to happen? Who's to say? But I know that I am like every week I'm putting money into my 401k. I'm putting some money into a Roth IRA. I'm looking for all those ways to keep that happening because my earning potential now, I mean, salary wise, is better than it was before, but it's not as much time. Right.
Sure.
So the thing was interesting to me as an actor was that I didn't think that, and this is like my whole generation is like this. No one thought about what happens at the end in terms of your Social Security or whatever. Right. And then all of a sudden, somewhere in the mid 90s, we're talking about 401ks and all this other stuff. And you're like, oh, right. Well, now I'm in my 30s or 40s and I haven't really thought about this real well. And now I have to make a change that's going to help do something.
For the long term. Exactly.
For the long term, right? Because we don't work in an industry. Yes, every union has a pension. Absolutely. I have a pension and a 401k from Actors Equity. I feel like there's like some weird little 401k thing in AGMA that I've not fully gotten rid of yet, right? So like weird things like that. And like what I'm putting into the 764 thing, like that will all come together, but I have to be very focused about how that really will play out for the end of my life.
Yes.
Right? Then the flip side is like I keep saying, if I die tomorrow, I'm going to be real angry that I have worked so hard to put money away.
Yeah. To not take full advantage.
I could have been on vacation.
Well, listen, Alan, I mean, it's sort of an interesting the final point on this unique perspective on artist sustainability, and of which I think that you sort of inadvertently or advertently laid out sort of a great example of a life of, because no matter what your the skills all apply. There's creativity everywhere. You're still, it's
Absolutely.
all. And I'm going to spring this on you. We end every episode with something we call comfort food performances, which is just a favorite performance of recent or late, that one we might come back to again. And I'll kick us off as an example, because I've never said this, but it's a good reference point for the two of us. My comfort food performance, Alan, is going to be Hayden T in Les Mis, because Hayden, as you know, is so good, and the Javert you saw on stage was not even anywhere close to the Hayden T you saw on the street.
Nope. 300%.
300%. It was a complete, but you know what? As a gay man, that's actually quite empowering to see someone so own them, all the facets and sides of themselves, right, and to do so thrillingly. And so Hayden T as Javert is my comfort food performance.
Yeah. I have several recordings that I will go to. Maren Maisie singing "We Can Never Go Back to Before." I'm gonna forget her name. What's her face singing "You Don't Know This Man" from the original
You Don't
Parade.
Know This Man. Carolee.
Carolee Carmello. That performance. I can watch America from West Side Story from the original movie until I'm dead. Also, the Seven Brides for Seven Brothers barn dance. Like there's a lot of things that I will go to fill that moment. God, the Alzheimer's is so bad for me. Kate Baldwin singing "I Don't Need a Roof" from
Big Fish.
Big Fish.
Yes.
I saw Big Fish. I literally went home to find a recording of her singing that on YouTube so I could hear it again. It was so powerful to me. I think there are gems everywhere, right?
Yeah, I love this. I love this.
Joaquina singing the end of Act 1 and the end of Act 2 of Paradise Square. Masterclass. That voice was spectacular. It was gorgeously consistent. That tear.
Really?
Yes. And I like, these are the gifts of theater.
Yes.
Right? Because there's all kinds of things that like are so delicious that you get to learn. Like if you're in the backstage situation and you get to be near a person like Hayden T, to know that person and see or listen to what's happening on stage, like that's the gift, right? That's what we all want to be seeing and excited by.
Yeah. No, these are great.
There's a lot of those things.
I love these comfort food performances. I keep track of them all. I love that these are about 8 of them.
I have a gazillion of them. Like not just the one. I have to have many.
Well, Alan, thank you so much. I really
thank you for having me.
I really appreciate this. Thank you, truly.
No worries.